First and foremost, we're not going to do no long, drawn out intro for this. We're just going to get right into the album we're going to talk about right now. Because I've been waiting to talk about this album for quite a while, even though I've talked about this album plenty of times in the past. In fact, on my old Metal Ben's Chronicles channel, Kill 'Em All was the very first album I ever reviewed on that channel way back in 2017 when I was just beginning here on YouTube. So yes, you know what we're talking about here. An album that really needs no introduction. But yes, we are talking about the legendary debut by Metallica, Kill 'Em All, which on Tuesday celebrated its 40th anniversary. That's right, 40 years. 40 years ago, this legendary thrash metal debut album was dropped upon the world. Recorded by a bunch of young men that were pissed off and angry, and just wanted to conquer the world with metal, way back then. A band that back then, was totally against trends, was totally against making music videos, was totally against mainstream. And for a lot of us that grew up before the Black Album, this band was our heroes. This was the band we looked up to. Of course, I'm talking about Metallica, So yes, Kill 'Em All, man. Where do we begin? I mean, I guess you got to go back to the beginning. When it comes to Kill 'Em All, you got to go all the way back to the beginning, the roots of Metallica. In a way, the roots of thrash metal. Where did thrash metal come from? And to me, prior to this, speed metal to me kind of began, I'd say, somewhere in the mid to late 70s. I mean, some people would go back to Deep Purples and rock, with the track Speed King, ironically. A lot of people would go back there, as far as the roots of where, speed metal came from. Now, as far as thrash metal goes, where did thrash metal come from? Or the roots of thrash metal? Obviously, I would definitely say Motorhead. Motorhead, Venom, even bands like, Anvil, Accept, Accept with Fast as a Shark, Anvil with 666, definitely the roots, those proto-thrash roots, like I'm trying to say, definitely Venom with, Welcome to Hell and black metal. Obviously, those were like groundbreaking beginnings that would lead into thrash metal, and with a lot of, the punk movement going around, going on at the time too, with, the Misfits, DOA, bands like that, you could trace the roots of, hardcore punk back to those days, Suicidal Tendencies, which actually came out before Kill 'Em All came out, the debut by Suicidal Tendencies, bands like that, when it comes to like hardcore punk. And, obviously you got the new wave of British heavy metal with bands like Diamond Head, Angel Witch, Holocaust, Sweet Savage, Jaguar, bands like that. I mean, that's pretty much where it began. That would lead into thrash metal pretty much. So let's talk about this band, Metallica, how it began. Well, obviously, this is a story that's been documented many times. I'm just going by my perspectives. Obviously, Lars came to America around 1980. Actually, at first, his ambition was to be a professional tennis player. He practiced for like 6 months hard to be a professional tennis player and realized he didn't want to do that. So then early on, he actually did audition for Metal Church when Metal Church was still located, I believe they were located in Los Angeles, California, right in the beginning before going to Seattle, So yeah, he actually auditioned for Metal Church, that didn't really pan out too well. Then, there was a band called Leather Charm that was doing new wave of British heavy metal covers, from bands like, I believe it was bands like Diamond Head, obviously Diamond Head, Sweet Savage, Holocaust, bands like that. So yeah, Leather Charm was basically James, that's where James Hetfield and Ron McCovey came from. They had a couple other members too. Was it Jim McMullen? I kind of forget now, but anyways. So yeah, that's pretty much where that began. And yet another band, and you had another band around at the time called Panic, which was Dave Mustaine's first band before joining Metallica. So Panic was playing, much faster and more aggressive, type of music at the time. And that's where the song The Mechanics came from. Yeah, Dave Mustaine actually wrote that when he was still with Panic. Just like, James Hetfield had written Motor Breath and Hit the Lights when, he was a part of Leather Charm. Either or, so Leather Charm put out an ad for looking for a drummer, and Lars answered it. And that's basically the roots and the beginnings of what would become Metallica. So yeah. And I might have the story a little wrong because actually Lars is the one that brought in those new wave of British heavy metal influences. He was the one that was listening to bands like Diamond Head, Saxton, Iron Maiden and stuff like that early on. So that's basically where the roots began as far as that goes. So then, obviously Ron McCovney would join Metallica early on too. First, they had a guitar player named Lloyd Grant before Dave Mustaine actually joined. So early on, obviously, Brian Slagle. Hold on a minute. I don't know why my laptop's being weird right now. Either or. Okay. Anyways, back to my story. Okay, early on, so yeah. Somehow Lars Ulrich came in touch with Brian Slagle, who was starting a record label called Metal Blade Records, ironically, and he was putting together this compilation of, young upcoming metal acts from around the California area. And, you had Rat on that early recording. Who else? Black and Blue. I believe there was that's right. You had a band called Stiller on there. And I think this is before Yngwie Malmsteen actually joined. There's an early version of Cool Day in Hell on there. So yeah, you had that, and you had this young band called Metallica, which Brian Slagle agreed that he would let Lars record a track for this if he could get a lineup. And, well, there was no real lineup together yet. So, yeah, that's where Hit the Lights, or the very first recording of Hit the Lights pretty much came from. You had, Lloyd Grant come in and do the guitar solos. Dave was not in the band he was not in the band yet. I'm pretty sure Ron McCovney was in the band. And obviously Lars and James. And yeah, that very early recording is extremely raw. James's voice, he kind of sounds like a fucking young Vince Neil early on. It's weird. His vocals were not developed yet. So yeah, that's pretty much the beginning of that. And obviously, y'all know what this looks like. And we'll put it up on the screen here. For those who may not know, there you go, Metal Massacre 1, which came out in 1982. So, Metallica started playing shows around March 14th of 82, I believe. Yeah, I believe that's when they played their very first show. In the process, too, they were recording demos in Ron McCovney's garage at the time. And there's early versions of Hit the Lights on there also, and Jump in the Fire, which Jump in the Fire had different lyrics. The lyrics were very juvenile. Actually, I think Dave actually wrote those lyrics. They were about sex and getting high. Yeah, that's the original lyrics of Jump in the Fire in a nutshell. So yeah, you had the Ron McCovney garage demos. I mean, there's different covers for this. Here's a cover I pulled up on Google. So yeah, that that was recorded around early 82, like March and April of 82. So yeah, it had 7 tracks on it. like I said, it had Hit the Lights on it, an early version of Jump in the Fire. I think the Mechanics might have been on it. I can't remember. But yeah, the Sweet Savage cover on it, Killing Time, which would get re-recorded down the road. And yet a few Diamond Head covers, like It's Electric, Sucking My Love. I think there's an early recording of Am I Evil on it. Yeah. Which I kind of wish Metallica would have done a cover of Sucking My Love early on. I would have really been interested to hear that with better production, but it never happened. Anyway, speaking of Sucking My Love, when you listen to Seek and Destroy, that one riff, or, the main riff, you can definitely tell that was kind of lifted from Sucking My Love when you listen to it. So yeah, then that's the first known demo that Metallica actually did in Rob McCovey's garage. Then I believe around July of '82, this came out. Power Metal, which was a 4-track demo of tracks that would be on No Life Till Leather and obviously Kill 'Em All. So yeah, you get another recording of Hit the Lights. I believe Motor Breath is on this too. I'm trying to think what's all on this. The Mechanics, I'm pretty sure, is on here too, and I believe the Phantom Lord. So yeah, you get that, which Ron McCovey was still in the band for that. Then we get to the legendary demo No Life Till Leather, a 7-song demo of songs that would be on Kill 'Em All. Obviously, you get a different version of, well, what would become the Four Horsemen, the Mechanics. And this thing's just raw. It's fast. It's aggressive. I can imagine what people were thinking who heard this for the first time back in 1982. It's like a fucking revolution, I can imagine it's what these people were thinking once they heard this, way back in '82. Yeah, man, you get raw versions of fucking, Seek and Destroy, Hit the Lights, the Mechanics, Jump in the Fire, the Phantom Lord. It's just a killer fucking demo. It's legendary. And man, I still need to get me a copy of this. I'd love to find this and own it. Either or. So yeah, that pretty much happened. Then, obviously Ron McCovey would leave the band because he couldn't take Dave Mustaine's drinking anymore. And, well, in replacement, they would get Trauma bassist Cliff Burton to join. Yes, Cliff joined the band. When James and Lars saw him at a club back in '82, they thought it was an electric guitar, lead guitar, and it was it's this fucking long-haired guy dressed up like a hippie, playing this electric bass, playing this lead bass, and, it's something that hadn't really been done before, prior. So that's pretty much how Cliff got the job. We all know these stories, by the way. Anybody that's a true Metallica fan knows these stories. So then we get into, the trip to New York where they meet Johnny Zazzola and Marcia Zazzola, and they signed with Megaforce Records after being rejected by every record label prior. I think the record labels at the time probably thought, oh, this is too fast, this is too aggressive. I'm pretty sure that's what a lot of these labels were probably thinking that rejected this. But thankfully, John and Marcia brought them to New York, New Jersey, to record Kill 'Em All. And obviously, the legendary story, Dave Mustaine was fired. I'm not going to get into that. We all know that about Dave Mustaine being fired, being sent back home because of his violent outrage of, when he would drink and all that stuff. We all know this. So then they would get Kirk Hammett to come in from Exodus to join the band. And yeah, they basically recorded Kill 'Em All in like 2 weeks. Yeah, Kirk had to learn all this in 2 freaking weeks. And I believe this was recorded around May of '83. I kind of forget the dates right now, but yeah, it was like 2 weeks in May of '83 they recorded this, and the rest is basically history. So Kill 'Em All's recorded, Dave Mustaine's out of the band, and come July 25th, 1983, man, well, Kill 'Em All comes out. And man, what a great debut. Now me, I was only 4 years old when this came out, so I naturally did not get to hear this right away in '83. But man, I can imagine what people were thinking. From stories I've heard, I can just imagine what people were thinking when this came out. And there was no press when this came out. I mean, this is an independent underground release. So, and back then, there was no internet. So it's basically word to mouth at the time when it comes to the release of Kill 'Em All. Like if you had a friend that had Kill 'Em All, naturally that's how you heard about Kill 'Em All. Or, you might have had a friend that dubbed it to another cassette tape for you, stuff like that. That's the way it was back then. It was all word to mouth, and who you knew that knew this music that was deeply, vaulted in the underground at the time. So yeah, Kill 'Em All comes out, and man, what an explosive debut. Like I said earlier that year, you had, Heavy Metal Maniac by Exciter come out. And that album was pretty damn fast too for, 1983 prior, but to me, that's not a thrash album. That's a speed metal album. This to me is definitely the first thrash album. I know some people like to debate that nowadays, but no, Kill 'Em All is definitely the very first thrash metal album. Because, what Metallica did, they took that energy from the new wave of British heavy metal and mixed it with hardcore punk, and they just did it faster than anybody else was doing it at the time, That's just what I think, And this is an excellent debut. I mean, it's just absolutely legendary. I mean, 10 fucking blistering tracks, you got Hit the Lights, man. Come on. You get the Four Horsemen, which is re-recorded, obviously. It's not the Mechanics anymore, is what I'm trying to say. And they added that little melodic intro, the Sweet Home Alabama middle section, which apparently Dave Mustaine wrote that, which I didn't know that. I thought maybe James Hetfield would have written that part, but no. Apparently it was Dave Mustaine. You get fucking Motor Breath, which is just a short little fast track, very punky, very Motorhead-like. Jump into Fire, pretty much kind of a deep cut, but early on it was a pretty decent hit because not too long after, trying to think, maybe I'm wrong here. Well, you know what, I'll show it anyways. If I'm wrong, whatever. Anyways, they would put out the single Jump into Fire. So, and that had live versions of Seek and Destroy and Phantom Lord on it, which it sounds like it was recorded in it sounds like to me it was recorded in a studio, and they had like they had like a crowd overdub over top the music. That's what it sounds like to me, So yeah, man, my God, yeah, Jump into Fire to me is still a killer tune. Just absolutely blistering leads of that track, and obviously the legendary Anastasia Pulling Teeth. Man, that instrumental 40 years later still gives me chills up and down my spine when I hear it because it's so damn iconic. And you damn well know before that nobody was doing stuff like that on the bass guitar. And I guess, as a musician, it kind of upsets me to this day that bass players don't use that type of style. You haven't really heard that style after Cliff Burton. Maybe a little bit in D.D. Verdi's playing from Overkill. But I can't really think of a lot of bass players that have that Cliff Burton type of style, when it comes to like the way he just delivered on bass. Then you get the blitz, you get the blistering Whiplash, but still sounds fucking killer to this day. And I've seen them play Whiplash last year live, and they still kicked ass playing that track live. Obviously you turn it over, you get the Phantom Lord, which, Yeah, there's actually a melodic midsection added in there that was not on the, not on the No Life Till Metal demo. They had that little melodic section in there, which would become, that would become common come future Metallica albums, with those melodic mid sections or, intros or whatever. But man, that's another blistering, thrashy tune. No Remorse is absolutely epic, just killer. To me, that's like an excellent deep cut. That's one they should definitely bring back in their set because it's absolutely killer. Absolutely love the ending when it turns into full blown thrash. Seek and Destroy, don't need to talk about it. It's fucking Metallica's anthem early on, too, and it's still played live to this day. Probably the most accessible track on Kill 'Em All, to be honest, because it's got that catchy chorus. And then you get the blitzkrieg speed of Metal Militia to end it off, and that's Kill 'Em All in a nutshell. Absolutely legendary. They would put out this Whiplash EP too, which I'd like to get my hands on this too. Man, I found this fairly cheap on eBay like 4 or 5 years ago, and I should have grabbed it back then. And when I went back to get it again, it was gone. I'm like, son of a bitch. But man, I'd love to get my hands on this EP too. So yeah, that's pretty much Kill 'Em All. So yeah, Kill 'Em All, an absolutely legendary debut. And to me, it's still a fucking 10 out of 10 album. It's my second favorite Metallica album, you know. And to me, it's just iconic. What more can be said? To me, it still sounds fresh 40 years later. It doesn't even sound like it was, it doesn't even sound like it came out 40 years ago. It still sounds so raw and fast and aggressive. Man. So, yeah, absolutely great stuff. So, I got this, apologize, that's not showing up right. I got the Jump in the Fire cassette, actually. Don't really have a lot of Kill 'Em All memorabilia. Now, I will say, too, there was Kill 'Em All was remastered in 1988, also on cassette and vinyl and CD at the time. And it actually had 12 tracks on it because they threw Am I Evil and Blitzkrieg on there, which when I was younger, I actually thought they were on the album. And I had no clue they were covers back when I first heard this when I was 9 years old, But, yeah, you're not going to really be able to see this. I still have my Kill 'Em All cassette tape with the 12 tracks. I lost the cover a long time ago. I've had this since probably, I'm going to say the early 90s, mid 90s. I've had it a long time. Obviously, Kill 'Em All on CD, and obviously we got Kill 'Em All on vinyl. Bang that head that doesn't bang. Man, I love that saying. And I still have this that I've had since, I think I've had this since the mid 90s. My Metal Up Your Ass shirt. Yes, I still have it. And believe it or not, I can actually still fit in this shirt. Yes. Yes, I've had this shirt a very, very long time. Probably need to upgrade and definitely get another Metal Up Your Ass shirt. They're not hard to come by. I know it's not as good as like the old school Metal Up Your Ass shirts, but hey, man, it is what it is. So yeah, man, in closing, for anybody that heard Metallica early on, and I was watching Ralph's stream and I was really thinking about it myself, it made me think back to when I got into Metallica because they resonated with me. I love the aggression of the music. I love the speed and heaviness of the music, and to me, this was my band. I didn't like none of that commercial shit that I was hearing at the time, So Metallica was definitely a breath of fresh air when I first heard them in '88, And just albums like Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, Justice for All, they're just timeless. They're still very iconic, in my opinion, you know. And it bedazzles me when I see some rankings on YouTube, you know, and you got some people putting Kill 'Em All like number 6 and number 7. I'm like, man, are you people really fans of thrash metal? I'm not trying to pick on anybody or make fun of nobody, but it just bedazzles me that somebody would rank Kill 'Em All that damn low, you know. And then I think, well, okay, these people either got into Metallica when the Black Album came out or when Load came out, you know. And it's like, okay, number 6 and number 7. Okay. Sucks to be you. I'm happy I heard them before they went mainstream and sold out, you know. And yes, you know, I am going to use the word sellout here because even though I still have a lot of respect for this band, I respect their legacy, I respect what they've done for metal, especially back then. Hey, man, you got to be honest with yourself, and they did sell out, especially on Load and Reload. They really sold out. When they cut their hair, you know, they didn't even want to be called a metal band anymore back then. I remember all this. You know, I remember all this when Load and Reload came out. They didn't want nothing to do with metal. You know, even back then, Phil Anselmo was getting up on stage and trashing Metallica for selling out, you know, back in '96 when Pantera was on tour, you know. Yeah. And some of the bands they've taken out on tour is very questionable, you know. And it's Ralph Stream that really made me think of this, too, because it's true. They were taking out bands like Limp Bizkit, Days of the New, System of a Down, Avenged Sevenfold, and all these big popular bands. I kind of get it when it comes to marketing, but again, you know, they could have took out somebody like King Diamond or Merciful Fate out on the road. You know, you could have took out a young thrash band like Warbringer or Toxic Holocaust out on the road. Give the fans give these fans exposure to thrash metal, you know. Or, you know, Evil or Municipal Waste, any band like that, you know, Metallica could have took on the road with them, you know, instead of these fucking highly mainstream popular acts that only people that listen to radio-friendly music care about, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's true, though. I mean, so Metallica did sell out in that aspect, you know. Are they still a damn good live band? Fuck yeah, they are. They're still damn good live. You know, I saw them for the first time last year, and they were fucking great live. You know? I mean, and as far as, like, the packaging goes, like, when they reissue their, you know, like, they did reissues for, you know, Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, Justice for All, and the Black Album. You know, those huge box sets. They did a great job on that. That's a great way to give back to your fans, you know, by putting stuff like that out. So, yeah, there's a part of me that respects them on that end of things. But then, you know, when it comes to, you know, when you think back early on, if you're an old fan like me, you think back like, this is a band that said, fuck posers, fuck trends, fuck making music videos, and then they go out and do it. So, you know, that part of me, yeah. Even today, you know, yeah, it still kind of hits me, you know. It's like, yeah, they did sell us out in a way. They kind of turned their back on the metal fans. All in all, though, they're still a legendary band. They're still, you know, they still have a great legacy, despite, you know, what I may think is some of their more recent stuff, you know. But you can't deny those early albums, you know, and the impact, especially Kill 'Em All. Kill 'Em All changed the freaking world. There wouldn't be thrash metal if it wasn't for Kill 'Em All. I mean, after Kill 'Em All came out, you know, there was a bunch of bands coming out, like, especially over in Germany, you know, and other countries like Creator, Sodom, Tankard, Destruction, you know, Zoomer, you know, Assassin, you know, and all these other bands, Accuser, you know, the list goes on and on. Even in America, you had other thrash bands coming out like Last Rocket, you know, Testament, Heathen, you know, Death Angel, you know, God, the list goes on and on, man. So yeah, they're, you know, they definitely influenced a plethora bands, and they're still influencing people, you know. But anyways, that's my review of Kill 'Em All. I'm gonna look at the comments section real quick. It looks like we might have some comments here. I don't know. My laptop's been acting very weird as of late, so okay. So I don't know what's going on here. Okay, I did not want to do that. Oh, geez, I'm trying to get the comment section up here. All right, so do apologize for this. Hey, man, this is the part of going live and doing this raw, right? Okay, so I'm going to try to back out of here quick. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I apologize for that. I'm trying to pull the comments up here. Okay, we got it. So, let's see what we got here. We got Me Metal Mike in the chat room. We got Big Bad G in the chat room. We got Snowy in the chat room. But anyways, yes. You know what I think it might be? I'm using a green screen for the very first time. I mean, and I think that's making my laptop be slow. But anyways, I just want to see if anybody else commented here. All right, cool. Oh, we had Speed King here too, man. What's up, Speed King? All right, man. We got the crew here. We got Big Bad G here. And yeah, I guess before I leave, in the midst of, Kill 'Em All, turning 40 years old, yesterday on July 27th was the 39th anniversary of Ride the Lightning, the second Metallica album, which you bet your bottom dollar, come next year at this time, we will do a live stream review on Ride the Lightning when it turns 40 years old. And I can't freaking wait. Then in August, well, we have the 35th anniversary of And Justice for All. Man, tell you what, man. So, yeah, tell you what, 2023 is an awesome fucking year for anniversaries when it comes to metal albums. That's for sure. Man, so much to damn well talk about, too, But yes, oh my God, I can't wait. So, all right, I guess Ralph did a thing on his stream. I'm not trying to, rip his stream off or anything, but I guess they picked their 3 favorite tracks off of Kill 'Em All. Okay. Now, I absolutely love this whole album. I don't think there's a weak moment on Kill 'Em All. But I would say my favorite 3 tracks would be the Four Horsemen. Yeah, definitely the Four Horsemen. I used to cover that in an old band I was in, and man, that song was so much fun to play, man. I'm going to say Four Horsemen. I'm going to say Whiplash, definitely Whiplash. And probably, man, this is fucking hard. Metal Militia, yes. I'm going to say Metal Militia, yes. Those would be my three favorite tracks probably for Kill 'Em All. Kill 'Em All, respectfully, but it's still a damn 10 out of 10 album. Legendary debut, man. And you know what? Thrash metal will continue to live forever. All right, guys, keep it metal and keep on banging those heads that don't bang. I'm out. Well, we're going to leave here in a minute.